Hey everyone, Kaya here with Revolutionary Being. Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about the planetary spheres through the lens of esoteric cosmology, and particularly because esoteric cosmology is sort of rooted in the Hermetic tradition from ancient Egypt, and theosophy and anthroposophy kind of use that a lot as their basic foundation. So Rudolph Steiner's teaching, which came out of the anthroposophy section of the Western mysteries, maybe we'll go in later all the detail of all that stuff, but specifically Rudolph Steiner's cosmology and more specifically his predictions around the eighth sphere, I find really interesting and relevant to our times. So I kind of dove into what the planetary spheres actually are from an esoteric perspective, from Rudolf Steiner's perspective, and realized that that kind of went back to the Hermetic tradition from ancient Egypt, which is fascinating, by the way. If anybody wants to dive into that philosophy, it's really near and dear to my heart, and I didn't realize it. So anyway, so first we'll talk a little bit about what the planetary spheres are from that perspective. And I just want to say this is a little bit of a new perspective for me because I come much more from studying the Eastern traditions, and maybe this traces back to there too, but everything that I studied spiritually from that perspective was a lot less focused on like our cosmology than I'm finding through the Western mysteries. But I find this perspective really enlightening, like just to sort of start to understand our place more within our solar system and our cosmology, and sort of the cycles that happen through that coincide with human evolution, the evolution of consciousness, not only for us as humanity, but for the earth itself. So I'm finding it just really interesting and relevant. And like I said, the Rudolf Steiner predictions for the eighth sphere, I'm finding extremely relevant. In fact, I'm seeing that in a very clairvoyant kind of way lately. And so I'm finding his work really supportive, even for navigating kind of current events and understanding what these challenges mean for us and how we can move through them consciously. So anyway, what are the planetary spheres? So in ancient history, the models of Earth and our solar system and our universe were very Earth-centric, right? The Earth was actually at the center. And scientifically, since then, we've disproved that, right? The old model, the Ptolemaic model, they call it, was this Hermetic model. And we've since obviously replaced that with the heliocentric model, which places the sun at the center. And all the planets revolving the sun, of course, and this vast universe, even outside our own galaxy. So while that's scientifically correct, one of the things that happened when we made that shift was that we sort of started to lose touch with our spiritual place in our local cosmos. And it started to become and feel like, and I think we're up against this challenge today, that we're just sort of like floating out in this vast sort of meaningless universe that's just mechanistic and scientific, and that humanity and Earth don't have as much as a central focus in the evolution of consciousness and all that. So I think what was lost in that model was the spiritual symbolism around how Earth is actually evolving and does actually evolve in relationship to the solar system and these other planets, and how humanity and the evolution of human consciousness really has a special place in that. And so that's what I'm gaining. I'm gaining that perspective from the esoteric cosmology and from Rudolph Steiner's work in the Hermetic traditions. So along with that Copernican model, right, of placing the sun at the center, and then later on realizing that we really are just floating out in this like huge universe. You have the Darwinian theory, right? And I think the combination of these scientific ways of looking at things, while they may be somewhat accurate scientifically, it sort of reduces humans to mechanistic, animalistic beings and gives rise to the misconception that the evolution of human consciousness isn't as central to our local cosmology as it was once perceived to be. So in the older models, Earth is at the center, and the spheres, so you have Earth, and then you have the elements, earth, air, fire, water around the Earth. And then you have the layers that are the orbits of the spheres, right? So now we know they don't really orbit around Earth per se. But the truth to be taken from that, I think, from what I'm gathering, is that the spheres themselves are actually planes of consciousness or different dimensions of reality. And in the New Age, we might think of these spheres as like different planes of the astral realms. And from what I'm gathering from my own kind of internal explorations, combining this with my understandings of frequency and vibration, is that the different dimensions are created by the harmonies between the spheres. So the way they interrelate gives birth to dimensions, alternate dimensions. And there are different levels and layers to those dimensions. So in the Hermetic tradition, the spheres were the worlds presided over by the planetary gods. Worlds traversed by souls on their way to incarnation and on their ascension after death. So, and this is also true in Rudolph Steiner's work. In Rudolph Steiner's work, we evolve through the spheres after death. And we get certain karmic lessons, but it's different than it is here. It's very different than it is here. But we go through each sphere and we go through some kind of quickening, some kind of experiences that work with our karma and stuff like that. And those spheres are, I believe, moon. From here, after we die, we go from moon to I don't remember. I'll have to look that back up. I think I have it written down somewhere. But so humanity also evolved through different spheres as Earth moved through different incarnations throughout history. So in Steiner's cosmology, there's a progression of spheres that the Earth actually moves through in each incarnation. So we're at the fourth stage of evolution for humanity. We're at the fourth iteration of Earth, which already came through Saturn, Sun. I can't remember again. There's a progression there too. I'll put some imagery up. But we evolved through these spheres to Earth, which is that fourth stage. But we also evolve through them after we die. So they can be seen as, like, if you're going to think about Earth now, Earth and humans evolve together into new forms in incarnations. So when Earth creates a new form, it creates a new globe. And humans actually evolve as their consciousness evolves, right, into new forms as well. So our solar system is actually a reflection of the alchemical evolution of human consciousness through cycles of time on Earth that seem to coincide with the physical creation of Earth and human in its current form. So there's an alchemy that's both metaphysical and physical. So after death, we move through these spheres, and then we move through more spheres on the way back to Earth. So after death, we are actually burning off our sheets through the spheres. And when we're heading back towards Earth, we're actually gaining our sheets. And this goes with the Hermetic, some sectors of the Hermetic philosophy. So in the Hermetic philosophy, the outermost sphere is the Father, right? Or the all, and it's the subtlest sphere. Okay, it's the subtlest dimension. And this dimension, which I consider to be the Brahman, okay, permeates all other dimensions. But as you come out of this dimension and creation springs forth, then you go through different layers and levels of creation. So you go from the Father, the all, to the first intellect, to the demiurge, to the gods and goddesses, and then into the planetary spheres, and then into Earth, right? So within esoteric cosmology, the spheres are tied to the reincarnation cycle. We go through a cycle of reincarnation through the spheres. And this is why the concept of an artificially created sphere becomes so important for humanity to be aware of. So according to Steiner as well, there are many different densities of beings within these spheres. And this is why I think of them sort of as different levels of astral planes too, because I can, sense into and see different levels of beings in there. So I'm thinking the spheres are actually a representation of these different dimensions. And we could view these beings as gods and goddesses, as angels and demons, the seraphim and the cherubim, but sometimes they're also just different levels of human evolution, because like I said, each sphere sort of represents a level of Earth's and humans' evolution. So when each iteration happens, certain beings stay back and certain beings move forward, and you have within these spheres different sort of levels of subtlety. And in Earth, we are basically the densest form. And it's agreed upon, even in the Eastern tradition, when you study the cycles of time and stuff like that, in the yugas that humans are the densest incarnation of consciousness, because there's a lot of different kinds of consciousnesses that are different kinds of subtlety and alchemical makeup. And in the Eastern, like in the ancient texts, in the ancient Indian texts, they say something, there's like 400,000 other types of humans almost, but like incarnated consciousness out in the cosmos. And Earth is the densest incarnation. And now dense doesn't always mean bad. It just means that we have the densest material form through our minerals, through our mineral body and the mineral composition. Not all other beings are made of that stuff. So anyway, like I was saying, in the Hermetic model, which resembles Steiner's cosmology, the outermost sphere is the subtlest realm, which penetrates all the other realms. They called it the Father, but they also called it the All. And it's a neutral force that includes the forces for creation and of creation itself, but it also precedes it. So I think of this as source. It is both creator and creation. And from there, you have the various spheres of intelligence, like I said, coming down into the Earth sphere. So this is, even though I'm a little bit new to the perspective of looking at the planets like this, this spiritually symbolic model really does resemble my own findings throughout my journey of sort of God and creation. let's see, I gotta refer to my notes. So we're going to try to get more into like the cycles of time, like through the yugas and Steiner's cosmology around new earth and what that looks like. And then try to weave that through the geomagnetic shifts that earth and the sun are going through right now in future videos, but I really could not fit it into this video. So let's talk a little bit about the spheres as alternate dimensions that are created through frequency and vibration. Let's see if I can make this coherent, because it was a little bit complex for me to put this into words. So there's an intelligent, coherent pattern that expresses itself through the mathematics of vibration as sacred geometry. An expression of the cohesive patterns of vibration on a spectrum that is both audible and inaudible to humans. And you can think of the spheres as each having its own, through its spin, it creates a certain frequency and pitch and velocity, right? And it, through that, it conjures up the energy that it takes to interact with the other spheres and create these dimensions. So I think when we're looking at like a planet, we're actually looking at a doorway into an alternate dimension. And Rudolph Steiner, it's funny, I was listening to another one of his lectures. I've been just doing like almost nonstop lectures, but he talks about how when we evolved through these spheres on Earth, the spin, we started in Saturn and the spin was like hella fast or whatever. And then it slowed down, got to the sun, slowed down, whatever. We get to the fourth stage, what we're on now of Earth, and it got to its slowest spin point already. So it got to its slowest spin point, and now it's picking up speed again as Earth prepares to birth into new Jupiter, which hopefully we'll talk about in the next video. But I thought that was really interesting because I was getting in my own inner visionary space that the vibration created by the spin and the frequency of the spin of the planet creates a harmonic relationship with the rest of our local cosmos, which creates these alternate dimensions. So, and this is both audible and inaudible. So you can actually tune into the Earth's frequencies, right, and vibrations through clairsentience, right? And you can actually hear the Om through your inner ear. I can hear that. So I can actually hear the Earth's vibration, and you can actually enter into sort of alternate dimensions of Earth through this inner, that's inaudible to the outer ear is what I'm getting at. So we can tune to the different harmonies created by nature and the organic harmonies created by the spheres. And specifically it's easiest for us on Earth because it's right here with us, but there's really no time and space. So you can actually, if you tune in and you're sensitive enough, interface with those energies and frequencies. So in the words of Pythagoras, each individual object has its own unique sounds, and these vibrations and frequencies contribute to a universal harmony of the whole that governs seasons, biological cycles, and all the rhythms of nature. And it's said that Pythagoras actually studied in ancient Egypt and maybe even India before he came back and gave us all this information about music and vibration. So each sphere has its own vibrational signature that contributes to the overall harmony of creation. So we're not just in like a chemically induced, made, physical universe. There's a lot more going on than that. Because consciousness itself, or the all, is expressed through creation as vibration, right? This is the word that they talk about in the Bible. the reason the word was the first thing is because that vibration is what ripples out and creates the shapes, the sacred geometry that then gives birth into new dimensions. At least that's how I'm seeing it. You tell me how you see it. Do you see this? So it translates to these sacred patterns. And you can see this in the cymatic patterns that arise energetically at the chakra points. And I've been talking about our chakra portals as these plug-in points to different dimensions, right? So I think you have, so check this out. This is a really interesting connection I made. So in Rudolph Steiner's Cosmology, you have 7 main phases that Earth goes through as different globe iterations. And then within each phase, the human consciousness evolves and develops more and more. And I was thinking, wow, that's so interesting that we have these 7 chakras, right? And how each chakra kind of opens up into a different dimension as well. So interesting exploration there. So complex fields of these subtle vibrations give birth to alternate dimensions of consciousness. Sacred geometry is symbolic of these alternate dimensions. And think about how the spheres dance. Think about our solar system and think about how all the different globes, how all the different spheres dance together. And think about what kind of patterns and shapes that in and of itself makes. And think about how each one is also spinning and vibrating at a certain, so you really start to get this picture of this overall song and dance and symphony that we are connected into. Like that song is being sung through us as well. So sacred geometry is the mathematical expression of the light matrix that interconnects all of creation. It carries consciousness. This foundational expression gives birth through the harmonic energies of the spheres to different dimensions of reality. Dimensions that we evolve through as we ascend. Dimensions that can also be accessed from within our own inner cosmos. As above, so below, which is also a Hermetic phrase I just found out. I say that all the time and I didn't even realize. Cosmos is an intelligent symphony, first and foremost, and our direct connection to this symphony is accessible from within. The more we resonate with the organic symphony of nature and the cosmos, the more balanced and awakened we become. Okay, let's talk about the 8th sphere. So again, the 8th sphere comes from Rudolph Steiner's work. And I can't remember when I first started seeing sort of an inner vision. I started connecting the dots between what was going on in the world through, there's a lot of things I don't want to mention here because I don't want my channel to just go down the drain so early, but just current events in the last few years. About 3 years ago, I really started looking into the deeper underlying control mechanisms behind those events and the deeper underlying intentions and motives behind these events that were orchestrated, and specifically through this lens of technology. And I started getting this pretty intense download. I started connecting the dots between different technologies, different agendas, different delivery mechanisms, how it was affecting humanity. And then I started researching and I thought, there's gotta be, like, I can't be the only one seeing this kind of thing. So I started to research into it. And one of the things I found was this concept of the 8th sphere in Rudolph Steiner's work. And one of the entry points of me getting so interested in Rudolph Steiner was that there's a quote from him about the V. And I think you know what I mean. And its impact on someone's basically like etheric body or their connection to their soul. And so I thought, wow, this guy's really cool. Like he's onto something here. I'm going to look into this. So I started finding this eighth sphere concept. And I thought, this is it. This is what I'm seeing. This is this big picture I'm seeing around technology. So the eighth sphere, in my own words, is an artificially engineered, man-made sphere that has the potential to trap human consciousness through subtle entrainment, which I talk about a lot, among other things, in this lifetime, but also through the incarnation cycle. Because remember, we reincarnate through the spheres. We work, according to this cosmology, we work through the spheres in order to burn off our karma, work with our karma, and receive our sheets to be reborn. So each sphere has a specific purpose, right, in that cosmology. And so, and it's linked, it ties us to this reincarnation cycle, unless you totally ascend completely and then you're outside that reincarnation cycle. I don't think I'm quite there yet. Maybe some of you are. Hopefully you are. That would be great. But so when you create an artificial sphere, you know, the danger is that you are mimicking an organic consciousness. And we could get into a lot of conversations about like organic consciousness versus God consciousness, because obviously there's a lot of layers between the Brahman and like how creation came to be and how Earth came to be. But there's a big difference between like a demiurge, right, and a technological sphere being. So at least from my perspective. So I even think that an artificially created sphere has the potential to alter our DNA. As I study more and more about DNA, I realize that DNA is actually light activated. It's frequency activated. It's activated by the frequency of our thoughts, our feelings, you know, our states of being, but also our environment and the lights and frequencies in our environment. So the eighth sphere is technologically based. It's a technologically based electromagnetic field of sorts that shrouds not only the organic frequencies, but in turn manipulates the human intuitive interface, which connects us to these organic frequencies. So it's a manifestation of a sort of hell in which dark forces from lower astral realms are transmitted through the tech. And the embodiment of this dark force is called Ahriman and is considered the Antichrist impulse. Rudolph Steiner is like an esoteric Christian, I think would be maybe the right phrase for him. So at its kind of base level, the eighth sphere is a false frequency or a collection of false frequencies that really affects our own electromagnetic system as a human, which then in turn affects consciousness and the expression of DNA and our physical health and everything else. So let's see where I'm at here. Some people depict it like inside the earth or under the earth. I'm going to try to post some imagery with this video, see how far I get with editing, but I'm going to give you some images of all the stuff I'm talking about. I depict it as like shrouding the earth. And I think one of the classic examples is these satellites that are now shrouding the earth, that are beaming certain kinds of frequencies and waves at us 24 hours a day. And I think I saw a headline the other day, I didn't really research super far into it, something like 50,000 satellites by 2029 or something like that. There's already like 20,000 up there or something. I thought when I started looking into this, oh, it's just, Mr. Musk, it's just his satellites or something like that. No, it's like 10 different companies now. So just with that alone, we've already got a lot of frequency manipulation, a lot of interference. Basically, it's a type of interference. But it's happening on a lot of other levels too. It's happening on so many levels that like I couldn't even go into it fully in this video. And there are other people out there like Alana Freeland, and some other people that are doing a better job of kind of outlining the specifics in that way. But it's everything from like just direct frequency manipulation to geomagnetic engineering, to, like I said, the satellites, to gene therapy, to what else? Virtual reality. So the idea of the eighth sphere is that the consciousness gets sucked into an alternate sphere, and that human will not actually evolve with Earth into New Jupiter, into the new incarnation of Earth. So then we won't talk a lot about this because I'm going to talk about this in the next video, I think, but the new incarnation of Earth, according to Steiner, is we will be manifesting our images directly. So you will be able to envision something and then boom, manifest it in your environment. So we're still going to have like somewhat of a physical environment, but it's going to be different. I think it's going to be subtler than the one we are in now because it's Earth's ascending actually. So the new Earth's orbit is faster. It's going to be spinning faster, and we're going to keep spinning faster until we get into those higher frequencies. Because the faster it spins, I think the higher the realm or dimension. So in that next iteration, supposedly we're going to be able to project our image forms straight into our outer reality. So the danger of the eighth sphere and all this virtual reality and the metaverse and all that is that even when you're looking at your phone, next time you look at your phone, like really pay attention to what your inner window is doing, right? Because you're actually projecting your consciousness into it, and you're projecting your consciousness into it and allowing the power of your consciousness to be formed by the ideas in there and by the images in there. So it's different than generating imagery from source and then manifesting that into your world. It's very different. So you got to even pay attention to like how long we have to pay attention to how long we're on our phones, and just be aware of it. That's really all it takes, is like understand that this window, right? This window, it's an I. It's not just an I am. It's an EYE-am. It's an I am. It's your inner I, because the consciousness of God, the God consciousness, the source consciousness, the all, is manifesting through you, through the center of you. And one of the ways it does that now, as we've evolved into this higher brain, is that it evolves through your inner window. It manifests through your inner window. So if you can place your inner I am on, I know that's really trippy, funny, but on a lot of different things, obviously. But you can also generate internally and then project that out and manifest that. And so when we're staring at our phones, we're actually allowing that inner I am to be consumed by someone else's ideas. And whose ideas are those? Whose images are those? It's a good question to ask. The people generating those images and those narratives and those ideas, they know how powerful your consciousness is. They know how to manifest reality through your inner I am, right? So it's important that we understand our own inner I am and how to use it, especially moving forward. So the danger of the eighth sphere is that That's one aspect, right? But the other aspect is that just at the level of frequency, our whole intuitive system starts to dance to an artificial song, right? So, and the point I'm trying to make in this video, without going into too much detail, which I just went off on a huge tangent, is that just at that frequency level, it affects our consciousness and the expression of our DNA. So how could that not affect the reincarnation cycle? If you got sucked into that too much, if we didn't know how to tune to the organic frequencies, if we didn't know about our creation mechanisms, then yeah, you can get swept into that and you can get subverted out of that reincarnation cycle. You can actually alter the expression of your DNA, right? And when we're talking about DNA, we're talking about the strands that excel, that are manifestations of a spiritual evolution, of the evolution of consciousness, of that kind of evolution that I'm talking about, where you can manifest imagery into your outer world more directly. That's a DNA activation, I think, because our new form is going to have the equipment for that too. Just like now we have our endocrine system and we have our nervous system and everything that evolved in order to have a certain kind of interface with our material world, or with this kind of world. So when we evolve into a new form, we get new equipment for a new kind of world. And so, but we have to actually reach towards that from here and understand where we're heading towards and evolve. We have to choose to evolve. So we function best when in subtle entrainment with, or a certain bioharmony with the organic frequencies of the spheres and of Earth and of the cosmos. And in fact, the subtlest organic frequencies as light turn the expressions of DNA, the strands that correlate to awakening and human evolution, on, which I believe in turn correlates to the reincarnation cycle. Because our traversing of the afterlife depends as well, not only on the expression of our DNA strands, but our energetic signature at death. So that's the other thing. If we have a certain state of mind and energetic signature at death, that's going to decide what we gravitate towards in our energy bodies after death. So it's not a punishment. You don't get sent to the 8th sphere. It's just a matter of allowing yourself to get sucked in for too long. And it's not like, oh, I just did the metaverse once or whatever like that. And I think it takes a lot of avoiding your own organic path to get sucked into there. So let's see, there are a lot of great studies out now, or a few actually, I should say, about DNA and light and frequency and language, and how it activates and how the gene expressions turn on and off based on that. Let's see. I think I said all this. So I just think of it as more of like a vibrational alignment with organic frequencies that lead to evolutionary pathways versus lower artificial frequencies that lead to regressive evolutionary pathways. And so the good news is that we can master our own internal interfaces for being in touch with source and being creators and feeling through the frequencies, understanding our relationship to the cosmos. So we have quite a bit of control over, I don't like the word control because it's not really control, but we can navigate our own evolution, I guess is what I'm saying. So, and having said all that, the 8th sphere is supposedly an inevitability. So this acceleration of technology, and it's kind of taking over of our systems, digital ID and things like that. The sense that the world is sort of almost consumed by this technological advancement. It's kind of an inevitability, and it's also an initiation. So it's through us going through that experience consciously and staying connected to our organic selves and the cosmos and source within it that we evolve. And so we're going to have to go through this experience as an initiatory experience in order to evolve into this new earth that's supposedly coming. So it's a transformative experience, and we just need to be aware of it and aware of how to navigate it. So let's talk a little bit more deeply about understanding how we get entrained to the eighth sphere versus the organic spheres. So I already kind of said this, but first and foremost, consciousness is manipulated through media first. This is the most superficial way to view this. Through our screens, right, is huge. But it's also when the narratives catch our attention, because whatever you put your attention on most often is what manifests. And it's a capturing of your inner eye, EYE, like I said. And this is partly through the pineal portal, but also through the intuitive interface on the frequency levels. And so firstly, we have to be really careful about what we focus on and for how long, and not just constantly move from one narrative to the next and regurgitate it, because then they're in control of the narratives and they're in control of what you're focusing on. So I'm not saying not to pay attention at all. I'm not saying not to be aware of these things and then make your practical preparations and everything, but be aware of them and also spend as much time focusing on what it looks like to develop the interfaces and the aspects of our form that are actually evolving into a new, more evolved human. And I really feel that. And maybe you guys can tell me if you feel that. Like, what are some of the ways that you feel your consciousness has been evolving? And especially in the last few years, I felt like a really huge acceleration on levels of clairvoyance, clairsentience, and specifically like this understanding or this feeling of sort of quantum crystalline interface. You guys tell me what you felt with that. So secondly, we have to be really careful what goes into our bodies. And this is a really tricky territory because it's at the point now where it's just coming in from everywhere, down to our water. And so that's going to get a little bit harder, but I think we're going to find solutions. There's going to be ways to purge out anything that sort of works with maybe the nanotech or anything like that. And the most important thing to remember, okay, is that no matter what level this is manifesting on, if you are attuned, if you spend time tuning to source, your own inner source, keeping your I am present and conscious, creating from there, if you spend time tuning to Earth's frequencies that are, deeper and subtler than all this other interference, if you spend time tuning to the cosmos and singing with that universal harmony, if you spend time clearing your mind and allowing that source field to come through, then none of this stuff's going to take hold. It's just not. Your vibration will not be aligned to it. So now all those things are going to get a little more challenging as we go along. And when I say as we go along, I mean, this might be like a while into the future that this is accelerating and manifesting. So it might get a little more challenging, like to navigate, but we have the power to navigate it. We have the power to stay consciously tuned to the right vibrations, frequencies, energies, consciousness, and to evolve in the ways we need to. So be careful what goes into your bodies. You might have to spend some time cleansing and alkalizing. And the most important thing is we need to understand our place in the cosmos and our spiritual nature within that, and not fall for these harmonic type deceptions that aim to deduce humanity to a mechanistic beast system that can be simulated by scientists. And this goes back to some of these like original shifts, like I'm talking about, like in the Darwinian theory and the Copernican model. And it's been a slow progression away from the true nature of our consciousness and spirituality into like an extreme scientific materialism. And so the eighth sphere is based in scientific materialism. It's that idea that we have the, you know, that first of all, it's the idea that when you look out there, that's exactly what you see. Like everything on the face of it, they don't know that as above, so below, that it's in here, that when we look out at the cosmos, we're actually seeing a reflection of ourselves and our evolution. So scientific materialism is the trap of thinking that we can manipulate things because it's empty and it doesn't have some life, sacred life in it that needs to be respected. And this is where like cloning, transhumanism comes out of, which are, you know, products of the eighth sphere. So we also need to understand our intuitive interface through our nervous system and our endocrine system and our subtle anatomy as a divine system that will not be hijacked and simulated by cold, lifeless computers. Now, however much you think that, however much you realize that the reality we're in is partly an illusion, and the ancient Indians call this the Maya, right? We know that it's filtered through the five senses. We know there's a lot more than this reality. We know that in a way it's holographic and fractal, and that it is almost like a simulation, like a God simulation, because it's not the organic source. I mean, it is an organic field, but it's not the source field, right? So within that, you have these different levels and layers of beings that helped create the world we're in. But it's still organic, okay? It is not created by computers, and it is not created by artificial intelligence. And some people are getting a little bit confused because they're calling this reality an artificial intelligence because it's not the source field. It's not the, you know, the subtlest realm, the Brahman. But it's the creation of that, which makes it somewhat illusory, but it is not artificial. Okay, so we have to understand the difference between artificial intelligence and real intelligence. That is the split. And we have to understand that from within ourselves. Okay, so anyway, so I'm going to link my last video about mapping the intuitive interface and developing clairsentience, because I think this is the way I feel the frequency of Earth and the frequencies of the cosmos. And it's also the way I started to understand that there are a whole bunch of other frequencies going on that aren't that aren't beneficial. But I can kind of control it and tune in to. Actually, I posted recently about the 1,000 like silver bees that I felt. And I think maybe those were the Seraphim or something, because the Seraphim are these like, they're in the subtler realms, right? And they're these winged light beings. I think they're winged light beings. They depict them with these real feathers a lot, just 4 wings with like maybe a geometry in the middle. But I think they're like that. They're like fourth dimensional being that's made of light and geometry, but the flapping of their wings is what creates the frequency for certain like really high realms. And I know some of this stuff sounds crazy, but I experience it directly. So that's one of the things I've felt like recently that I've been able to tune into more. And when I tune into it and hear it with my inner ear, it downloads into my system. And then I get this sort of upgrade into a new level of vision and understanding and alignment, inner alignment. So I'm going to link that last video to the clairsentience. And next time I'm going to try to talk more about the clairvoyant interface versus the clairsentient and the solar plexus, because last time I talked more about the second and fourth, sixth. And I want to talk more about the solar plexus and, you know, its relationship to the will mainly, and how we use our will in the astral realms and how we use our will through the spheres, and how important it is to inhabit our will center and consciously and connect that will center with the source consciousness, which is the divine will basically. But we're out of time for this video. In fact, I went on so many tangents. I don't know how long this ended up being, but so glad to have all of you here, and I'll see you next time. I'll see you next week. Let me know if you have any questions or explorations or whatever. Leave me a comment. Super grateful for all of you. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Sending love. Mwah.